The state of Illinois requesting a delay in getting their experts together for the case challenging Illinois' gun and magazine ban in the Southern District of Illinois federal courts, and the judge granting and denying in part that request. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for hanging out. It's Bishop on Air. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, bringing you the latest on gun ban litigation. And let's go right to it with the docket for the Southern District of Illinois federal case, where you've got Judge Stephen McGlynn handling this. And we've tracked this all the way from whenever Governor J.B. Pritzker enacted the ban on semi-automatic firearms, magazines over certain capacities, and a gun registry. That was in January of 2023. A few weeks later, flood of lawsuits in state court and federal court. In federal court, you had lawsuits in the Southern District consolidated. In the Northern District, you had lawsuits challenging it. These are in district courts, and there were different outcomes on preliminary measures. Initial requests to have some kind of action before they get to the merits. In the Northern District, you had several cases challenging not just the state's ban, but also Cook County, Chicago, and Naperville's ban. Judges in the district federal courts said that the state had a likelihood of succeeding on the merits, which again was on a preliminary request for them to say, okay, we need some kind of relief now. Are you going to give it or not while we deal with the underlying issues? Northern District courts said that the state had a likelihood of succeeding. In the Southern District courts, Judge Stephen McGlynn out of East St. Louis, he consolidated 4 different challenges against Illinois' gun ban. On a preliminary issue back in late April last year, he did grant a preliminary injunction, meaning that the law was put on hold until it was dealt with. And then you had 6 days of what the gun rights community called Freedom Week, and that led to more people going out and buying semi-automatic firearms. At that time, if you recall, we talked to some gun stores that said they had the busiest week in quite some time. But then after 6 days, the state went to the appeals court, the 7th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals, and got a stay on that injunction. The stay, what that means is it pretty much reverses it while they deal with it in the appellate court. So they reversed the injunction with a stay, and then they dealt with it in the appellate court, even though people were requesting the U.S. Supreme Court to step in the middle of the case to deal with this. The U.S. Supreme Court did not take those cases up at that time. So you have the Southern District of Illinois awaiting for the appeals court to come to a decision. The appeals court, I believe it was late August, did come out with their decision, ultimately saying the state had a likelihood of succeeding on the merits. So that kicked the merits back to the Southern District federal courts, where Judge Stephen McGlynn said he's not waiting around, and they're going to deal with the merits on this case. And that's where we're at now with the Southern District of Illinois docket. So let's go back a bit just to look here. You had a hearing that happened. The judge came out in April and laid out some deadlines and said no later than May 10th, which is just around the corner. The issue for a scheduling conference and submitting their expert reports, again, May 10th, that's 2 days away from us. And then it says parties shall carbon copy the court. Follow-up status conference will be held on May 16th. All right. So that was the last month whenever Judge Stephen McGlynn issued that entry on the docket. Then you had a couple of things happen just in by way of the process. An attorney withdrew from the National Shooting Sports Foundation, so that was ultimately granted to be terminated from the case. Some procedural stuff. But then you get to May 3rd. So last week, the states, they motioned for an extension to file expert reports. All right, so this is something I think that a lot of people in the space of litigating against gun laws finds that state actors do. They request a delay. They request things to be slowed down. Here we are, a year and a half or so after a gun ban was enacted, and people say their rights have been injured. You have the states continuing to ask for delays in addressing this. So back to the docket, the state's motion to extend Let's go ahead and take a look at that really quick. Motion to extend deadline for expert reports says that defendants, Attorney General Kwame Raoul, Governor J.B. Pritzker, State Police Director Brendan Kelly, by and through their attorney, Kwame Raoul, they moved to pursue for suspension of the May 10th deadline to provide experts' reports until after the close of fact discovery. Then they go through and they spell out why they're looking for that delay. Then you had the response from the plaintiffs. They came in and plaintiffs, Federal Firearms Licensees of Illinois, Gun Save Life, Gun Owners of America, Gun Owners Foundation, Piasaw Armory, Deborah Clark, Jasmine Young, Chris Moore, collectively FFL plaintiffs. Goes through the others for the Barnett case, the Illinois State Rifle Association, Second Amendment Foundation, and so on, by and through their attorneys. They say May 3rd, defendants requested a suspension of the May 10th, 2024 deadline for parties to exchange written reports until sometime after the close of fact discovery. Plaintiffs take no position, they say, regarding defendants' request. Plaintiffs will be prepared to comply with the court's May 10th deadline. However, so as not to unfairly prejudice plaintiffs, should the court grant defendants any extension of time to extend expert reports, plaintiffs respectively request a commiserate extension, meaning they also want to have an extension if the state gets an extension. So there you have the response. But then if you go back to the docket, you'll see that the judge did indeed issue an order here. And I'll just read that to you. It says, before the court, motion for extension of time to file expert reports filed by defendants. The defendants request the deadline for the exchange of expert reports to be delayed until 30 days after the close of fact discovery, or in the alternative, request a 30-day extension on the deadline to file an expert report. Who's urgent leave for unknown duration, and that's one of their experts, Martin Schreiber, I guess is how you pronounce that. But the plaintiffs, they filed a response stating they take no position. All right, so the pending motion for extension is granted in part and denied in part. The governor's request to delay the disclosure of expert reports until after the completion of fact discovery is denied. The government's request for a 30-day extension of the deadline to file Dr. Schreiber's reports is granted in part. This report shall not be due prior to the May 16th status conference. The court will take up this matter at that time. Signed, Judge Stephen McGlynn. So that's the latest in the case challenging Illinois' gun and magazine ban in the Southern District Federal Court. Still going to have the May 16th status conference. We'll see if that's going to be open court or via Zoom, and how that's going to play out. I will tell you that likely that is a session day where both chambers are expected to be in session. So I'm going to be tied up at the State House, but we'll do what we can to get updated on that case moving forward in the Southern District of Illinois. So clearly there's still moving pieces when it comes to challenging the state's gun and magazine ban. But things going on elsewhere across the country. You have a bill banning bump stocks and creating an electronic gun sale registry came up short in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives on Tuesday. And my colleagues over at the Center Square, Pennsylvania, Kristen Smith, writing that bills banning bump stocks and creating an electronic gun sale registry came up short in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives Tuesday. The proposal failed by one vote amid a narrowly divided lower chamber after critics said both violate the Second Amendment and, in the case of bump stocks, duplicate federal law. So interesting to see that happen in Pennsylvania. Not the only thing happening across the country when it comes to gun legislation. You've got the NRA claiming victory in Colorado as a ban on semi-automatic firearms apparently is now dead for this legislative session in Colorado. The NRA's executive director saying it's a victory for hunters, competitive shooters, and Coloradoans who want to protect themselves and their loved ones with the firearm of their choice. So yet another headline there for those in Colorado. But you have other things as well, including the gun control lobby talking about banning ghost guns. They say that in Vermont, a measure passed 110 to 31 in the Vermont House and 26 to 3 in the Senate The gun lobby tried and failed to block the legislation that'll stop the deadly flow of ghost guns into our communities, they said. Clearly, the efforts in other states still moving right along in trying to control firearms. Here's another gun control advocate talking about a bill, this one in New York. It would be the first of its kind in the nation, according to Everytown, where they're looking to essentially block pistols that can be modified to fire like machine guns. So another filing here, and this one from Bearing Arms, a pro-Second Amendment publication. This is a ban on convertible pistols, is how they characterize it. So clearly, you've got New York looking to pass these types of laws. And even Hannah Hill with the National Association for Gun Rights saying, every time I think New York's gun laws can't possibly get worse, they go and file something like this. This is the state whose gun law brought us the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin case, and they're doubling down on their absolute defiance of both Second Amendment and the Supreme Court. So, again, just some of the things happening across the country when it comes to Second Amendment issues. And even in North Carolina, gun owners call on lawmakers to pass constitutional carry. Another story there from Bearing Arms. So a lot happening across the country when it comes to the Second Amendment, and something I think is worth touching on from time to time to give you not just what's happening in Illinois, but also broader picture nationwide for some of the things that are happening across the country in the Second Amendment space. So there you go. Hopefully you are informed on that perspective of what's going on with the latest in not just Illinois. There has been some movement in other legislation or litigation against various gun laws. You've got the case still pending challenging the state's firearm liability law, firearm industry liability law that says that firearms companies can be sued for advertising to kids or for allegedly making communities less safe with their products. You still got, of course, the city of Chicago suing Glock using Illinois' law on that. But you also have the case that's challenging the FOID card and some interesting things happening there. We'll have to unpack a bit more in the future here with Bishop on Air. So appreciate you taking the time with us each and every weekday morning with Bishop on Air.